Hey, what's up guys, Riff here. So today we're going to be talking briefly about Hasan Piker. Now I think everyone watching this video is aware of his long history of unhinged takes. However, I believe some of this rhetoric has definitely increased over the past week or two because his most valuable currency, his ego, has been threatened by two events. And they're both relevant to the type of topics we talk about on this channel, hence why we're making this video today. Those two events are the Trash Taste podcast situation, as well, in his own words, his dethroning as the top political streamer on Twitch by Asmongold. Now, when I say increasingly unhinged takes, I'm more saying the frequency at which he makes these unhinged statements. In fact, during the whole Trash Taste podcast situation from about a week ago, his immediate response was talking about things including his idea of having a terrorist propaganda tier list live on Twitch, which obviously if he did that, he would face no punishment. In fact, you'd probably get a special cameo, another birthday song from Dan Clancy himself. So what am I talking about? Well, this is the clip making the rounds right now on social media. Let's give this a quick listen.
There's about $50 billion estimated that are lost every year in Medicaid, just in fraud alone. No.
If you cared about Medicare fraud or Medicaid fraud, you would kill Rick Scott, okay? You wouldn't make Rick Scott, former governor of Florida, Rick Scott, you wouldn't make him a prominent part of the Republican Party.
There's about...
Yep. That's Hasan directing people to kill a sitting U.S. senator. Normally, that would get you a knock on your door from the FBI at the very least, but I think everyone looking at this objectively would say if you were a regular streamer, you would not only be banned for saying this, you'd probably be permabanned. You would never come back to this platform. And also what makes this even more hilarious is the fact that not even a year ago, he made a similar threat to another US official with this quote tweet here sharing this image, which for context was the weapon that was crafted to assassinate the former Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe. So he has a history of doing this. And like I said, right now, I want to look at the two events that I think are kind of making him spiral because his ego is being challenged in ways that don't sit well with him. The first one, as I said, is the Trash Taste podcast situation. For those who didn't watch my video a few days ago about this, he went on as a special guest to this Trash Taste podcast, which is run by the Anime Man, CDawg VA, as well as Giguk, three prominent channels in the anime content creation space. And as you can see, people reacted very, very negatively to this. And as I said, I respect the boys who run this podcast. I think generally they have good intentions with things, but I think they grossly miscalculated how people would respond to his appearance as a special guest on the podcast. They even said they expected like a few negative comments. I definitely don't think they expected 99% of the comments to be negative in regards to the choice of special guest. And when we covered this about 6 days ago, the like-dislike ratio was pretty much 50-50. It was like 15,000 dislikes, 14,000 or 15,000 likes, 14,000 dislikes. And now it's up to 70,000 dislikes, and it only grew to 22,000 likes. Now, I don't think this is fully a criticism of Trash Taste. I think this is more of a repudiation of Hasan Piker. As I pointed out in the previous video, he's been on the podcast before, but that was about 2 years ago, and I don't think a lot of people were as informed about some of his unhinged beliefs. And now that people are more familiar thanks to a lot of videos calling him out, this is what people think of Hasan in anything he is a part of, and they are making it very well known in the dislike ratio there. And also, overall, that also was the result after he begged his own community to counter what he claimed was a brigade on him and the podcast episode, and that only made things worse, by the way. But clearly his ego was very hurt by this. I think he went outside his own community and saw how badly he was received, and I think it made him very upset. Hence why he asked his own audience to go and try to remedy the situation. And we get it, right? Like everyone who's on the internet and has some level of controversy attached to them, which I would say applies to pretty much everyone we're talking about today at some level, you're going to deal with people who are going to make viral tweets hating on you and things like that. You're not going to be well liked by everyone outside your community. But I think it's a little different when your mere presence on anything will draw a ton of negativity. And that's what's going on with Hasan Piker. And I think it's pretty obvious he's seeing this first and foremost and very clearly with the Trash Taste podcast. And it's just not going over well with him. Now, that's the first event I'm talking about here. I want to get to the second event. And that's, of course, the Rat King himself, Asmongold. In Hasan's own words, he has now overtaken the top spot as political streamer on Twitch. This is a label that Asmon doesn't even care for, and he still considers Hasan the top political streamer because it's not the only thing that Asmongold does. Well, it's still a good portion. It's not the only thing he does. But yeah, to Hasan, this stuff matters. The numbers matter. The labels matter because it's, attached to his ego. I think that's very obvious. And this clip right here is really telling of that. He's going after Asmongold and basically blaming him for a rise of right-wing sentiment permeating throughout the streaming world and honestly throughout the world is really what he's implying in many cases. And he again brings up the numbers and seems very insecure about it. Let's give this a quick listen.
If there wasn't such a high density of hogs that were like literally looking desperately for some kind of hog content on Twitch, which led to a massive amount of people gravitating towards Asmongold and Asmongold getting like fucking 50K every day doing right-wing commentary, none of these motherfuckers would do this, okay? They just wouldn't.
Okay, so first of all, calling Asmongold right-wing is hilarious. I think most people would view him as a centrist. He's a guy who is on many different occasions, including recently, said he wanted to vote for Bernie Sanders. So if he's some right-wing pundit, he's not a very good one, let's be honest. But this is the deal here. So he's at first implying that people are only speaking out on certain things and criticizing certain things and sharing certain opinions because Asmongold basically made it okay and they want to grift, right? They see the numbers he polls and they want to emulate those numbers. It's only about numbers and popularity with whatever they're sharing. And now they're being emboldened by Asmongold. And I think that's, number one, pretty insidious. It's basically implying that there are a lot of people out there who have these beliefs, but were afraid to say them because, well, let's face it, the last half a decade or so, cancel culture has been a real thing. If you had wrong think or you criticize the wrong thing, your life could literally be over. And now that sort of phase is dying out and people are finally speaking up. And speaking up for what turns out to be the majority opinion in many regards. And I think the reason Asmongold is so popular, especially right now, is because his opinion on things is not right-wing or left-wing or anything like that. It's just common sense. It's the type of opinion that the average person would at least have a somewhat positive view of. They may not agree with everything he's saying, but they might at least find what he's saying to be reasonable and not something extreme like sympathizing with terrorists or something like that. If you asked 90% of the people what they thought about his average take, I think they wouldn't have much of a problem with it. And he has proven that through his views, I mean, every video getting around 1 million plus views on pretty much every political topic, he's proven that a lot of these opinions are popular. And I think that has emboldened people not to grift off of that, but to think, oh, I can actually share my opinions on things, and this is actually popular right now, and I'm not going to get a brigade of people trying to cancel me and ruin my life for criticizing what they might consider the wrong thing. Okay, and no content creator is ever perfect, okay? But again, in this sort of conversation between Asmongold and Hasan, who's going to relate more to the common person with their views? Like, I think we're talking about some pretty common viewpoints versus extreme ones. And I think it's pretty obvious which one of those labels applies to each person in this scenario. And like it or not in this particular situation, but the general population voted for this sort of stuff. And, again, we're talking about the labels here, but let's hear a little more because he's very upset about losing this top spot.
That's it. For a lot of people, it's not like a genuinely held perspective. For many of them, they just don't care. It comes from a place of like, I don't really give a shit. I don't really necessarily give a shit about politics, but I see that this is like getting clout. And the perfect example I can give you is when the most prominent voice of politics on the platform before this last round was myself.
He's mentioned it twice in 30 seconds. Have you seen that? Any clip you find of Hasan right now is mentioning that he has fallen behind Asmongold in this race for the top position of political streamer on Twitch, which is a lone race because Asmongold doesn't even care for the label. But again, with this whole general population label he's giving, the general population is not agreeing with you right now on all these things. I think a lot more people are agreeing with the takes that Asmongold has because, again, they represent what most normal people think. They're not as extreme as a bunch of wackadoos on Twitter or Reddit will try to make you feel like they are. But proof of that really shows just in the coverage of the Trash Taste podcast situation. Look at the way people agree with this. The like-dislike ratio, 54,000 likes versus around 700 dislikes. That's roughly a 98% like-dislike ratio on a very controversial topic, directly talking about this relevant situation involving Hasan. I think, again, it shows he has a pretty agreeable opinion even on some more controversial topics. And let's not forget, the clip in particular that fueled this entire conversation was this right here. This was a Worcester, Massachusetts City Council vote where a group of LGBT people wanted to make the city a sanctuary for transgender and gender diverse people. And this is what we were talking about. And then Hasan was upset about some comments that Amaranth, of all people, made about this. And first of all, if you're listening to anything Amaranth has to say about pretty much anything, you've already kind of lost. But anyways, they're basically trying to say, Hasan's trying to say that Asmongold and people like that have radicalized people to say all these crazy, unhinged things, referring to their criticisms of this clip. Now, of course, most people find this to be crazy. Let's watch what we're talking about here.
If you say that you're afraid of Trump and that's why you don't want the city to be a safe space for trans people, you better prepare for trans people to make this a very unsafe space.
I'm shaking right now. I don't want to be here.
Up,
I'm sorry, am I taking too long pleading for my life?
You remembered how many children I have and that 2 of them are trans.
I speak as both the B and the T in the LGBT.
I'm multiply disabled. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder that causes me immense physical pain. I'm on the autism spectrum, and I have narcolepsy, and I couldn't drive myself here, so I had to hide from my driver that I was in drag, which is not an easy thing to do in drag.
I do not want to be here. It's my day off. I do not want to be in your DMs. I do not want to be in your email inboxes. I do not want my creativity writing diss tracks like Kendrick. I don't want to spend an hour applying glitter on my face so that you will hear and see me.
You guys literally made her put that glitter on her face. But anyways, this is an example of the type of clip you show 90% of people in the world and they'll be like, yeah, that's weird. This looks like a blue sky meetup. Okay, these people are unhinged and these are the type of people calling you a bigot and a freak on social media, right? But that's what we're talking about here. And this is Asmongold's coverage of that clip that is being referenced in this entire situation. And you can see how people viewed his opinion that is basically stating this is a clown show, right? And I think people agree. 81,000 likes, 500 dislikes. That's a 99 plus like-dislike ratio on 2.5 million views, by the way. So this left the ether of the monolith of Asmongold's followers. Clearly, a lot of people agree that this is outlandish behavior. And I don't think this is some right-wing extremism. I don't think Asmongold is influencing anyone. I think he's speaking a commonly held belief about stuff like this. Okay, this is a clown show. You show this to a regular person, they probably agree. And that's really all there is to say about this, because we also see how deep this goes. He is directly blaming Asmongold for causing all this radicalization. The irony, by the way.
Why they're saying
This is, in many ways, no different than when Elon Musk hits the fucking sig heil, other people do it too, and it normalizes that kind of attitude. It normalizes that kind of politics. And it's precisely the same thing that's happening here, okay? Asmongold says a bunch of unhinged shit, and he's popping off. Other content creators see that, as I've told you before, and they respond to it. They see that, and they go, ooh, I can get in on this as well.
So what he's saying is content creators like Asmongold are normalizing unhinged behavior and normalizing very dangerous things people are saying. Let me just remind us of where we started this
About
video.
$50 billion estimated that are lost every year in Medicaid, just in fraud alone. No.
If you cared about Medicare fraud or Medicaid fraud, you would kill Rick Scott.
That's how we started the video. Okay, we're not even getting into the terrorist sympathizing and the platforming of terrorists and the comments about 9/11 and all these crazy unhinged things that literally go on a list that's so long it's hard to keep track of what's going on. But yeah, this is the person angry at you for normalizing what? Looking at a very bizarre scene and saying, yeah, that's a bunch of weird people. I don't know. There's really nothing else to say on this situation. Two real pain points for Hasan that have struck his most valuable currency, which is his ego, of course. And that's the Trash Taste podcast situation that has only gotten worse for him. And then, of course, getting dethroned as the top political streamer on Twitch, which is clearly two things that have hurt his ego a lot. But for now, that's going to do it for this video. As always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.